Hello, my sweet and precious children, students. I was going to come out as children. Today we're going to be talking about percents. We are on lesson 47, third edition of the Algebra 1 book, Saxon Algebra 1. This is on page, it starts on page 187, but we move quite quickly into page 188. Now, the way that Saxon teaches this is okay, but I like my method much better. Anytime you see a percent problem, it could be two things. Is over of equals percent over 100 if it's a word problem, part over whole equals percent over 100. That's one way of doing it. So taking a look at these, example number 1, if you're in my class, you're going to be writing your notes down right here. 20% of what number is 15? So we see, 20% of what number is 15? Work the problem and then draw a diagram. You don't have to draw a diagram. What we're going to do is, when you see it's a percent problem, I want you to do your setup. Your setup looks like this. It's got fraction equals fraction, and you throw your 100 down in there. 20%, well, our percent goes above our 100, so 20% of what number, and now the word what means X. What number means like, hey, what are we looking for? So X, right? Of X, so X goes down here because it's an of, is 15. That goes right here. So the way that we would solve this is we're going to cross multiply. This times this gives me 20x equals this times this, which is 15 with 2 zeros. Let's, in order to get that x by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 20. This cancels out, this cancels out. Divide this by 20, lob off those zeros, right? And what you have is x equals 150 divided by 2. Remember when we're dividing things by 2, we're cutting it in half. So if you have $1.50 and you cut that in half, you have 75 cents, right? So half of that would be 75 cents. So x equals 75, okay? Always double check that if you're solving for percent, you need to put your percent right here. Otherwise, this is perfect. Example number 2. Example 2. What percent of 140 is 98? Well, we see it's a percent problem. Let's do our setup, okay? What percent? What means X? And so X percent. So we're going to be looking for our percent. Of 140, right, is 98. Is 98. Bam, there we go. Let's do it. This times this gives me 140x equals this times this, which is 98 with 2 zeros, because 98 times 1. Now we are going to divide by 140. Cancel out, cancel out. What I do to one side, got to do over here. Let's go ahead and lob those zeros off, and we're going to do 980 divided by 14, which gives me 70. X equals 70. Oh, and we are solving for percent, so you got to go back and double check. Bam. Make sure you throw a percent sign on there. Let's look at example number 3. 15% of 300 is what number? Well, it's a percent problem, so let's do our setup. So 15%, percent goes above our 100, of 300, of goes down here, so we're going to put that here. Is what number? Is our x, right? For what? So we cross multiply. This times this equals this times this. So 100x equals 15 times 3 is going to be 45 with 2 zeros. Making sure it's 30, 40. Yes, 45. Divide this by 100. These cancel out. Divide this by 100, because what I do to one side, got to do the other. X equals, lob off them zeros, bam, 45. 45. And we're not solving for percent, so we're in good. Okay, so why is this important? Well, we're going to be talking about percents that are greater than 100 or less than 1. Greater than 100. Less than 1. Knocking things over here. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about example number 4. This guy says, what number is 160% of 60? Well, we know it's a percent problem, so we're going to work it like this. What number is, right? We know is over of. Let me rewrite that over here. Is over of equals percent over 100. What number is, so that's going to go in our is, what means X, right? 160%, well, we know our percent goes up here, of, what number is it? 100, of 60, bam. If you're doing this without a calculator too, you can lob some zeros off and reduce that if that makes it easier. I'm just gonna do that straight off the bat. Lob those zeros off. This times this gives me 10x equals 60 times 16. Well, 6 times 16 is 96 with that extra 0, right? So got a 0 there. Divide both these guys, divide. These guys cancel out, and I get and this cancels out, and lob those zeros off. X equals 96. Now, come back up here, and we look at that, 96 out of 60. Let's say that this was a math test, right? And you had 60 problems, but then there was a whole bunch of extra credit. That makes sense. It's going to be 100, more than 100%, right? Because this is larger. Also looking at this, see how it's larger on top than the bottom? This needs to be larger on top than it is on the bottom. So it's kind of a way for you to gauge if you did it correctly. Okay, so then let's see about this. Okay, I'm just looking at these other ones. So that's the gist of it, to be honest. We can do, let's look at example 5. It says, example number 5, this is on page 190 if you're following along. If 75 is increased by 150%, what is the result? Okay, so if we take a look at this here. Okay, so looking at this guy, I had to stop and just deal with my dog for a second. So where were we? If 75 is increased by 150%, what is the result? Well, it's a percent problem, so let's do our 100, right? We know straight off the bat, 150%, that's gonna go in our percent spot, so that's easy enough. Now, the hard part is if 75 is increased by, so we're gonna start with 75 and then we're going to increase it by 150. So 75 is 100% of what we need. We wanna know what 150% is. So we're gonna put an X here, okay? So 100X equals 75 times 15, which gives me 125, okay? Divide that by, 1,125. Divide that by 100, divide this by 100. So, that was 75 times 15 is this number plus a 0. I forgot that 0 there, okay? These guys lob off, and I end up with X equals, and I move my decimal in one spot, 112.5. But I'm not done here, okay? This is the additional increase. What we end up having to do is also add it to the original. So this is how much we're increasing it by, and so we need to add it to the original. So if I do that, I get plus 75. 112.5 plus 75 gives me 187. I'm relying on my calculator because I don't want to make a mistake. It's going to cost me a fortune in candy. So 75 increased by 150% would be this. That what we're increasing it by is this number right here, but the total is going to be this. There's actually another way to do this. Since I'm going to be doing this like this, let's see. So since we're increasing it by 75, we're taking this 100% and we're adding another 150% on that to give us 250%. Does that make sense? This times this gives me 100x equals 25 times 75 gives me 1875. I don't want to forget the 0 this time, right? Divide this by 100, divide this by 100, lob these off, I get x equals, these cancel out. This is 10, so I'm gonna move that decimal in, 187.5, okay? So if you're increasing it by a certain amount, you need to either add 100 or subtract 100. So let's try another one of these. What percent of 90 is 306? So for example 6, we see it is a percent problem, so let's do our setup. So what percent, so we're gonna be looking for percent, so x, of 90, remember of goes on bottom, is 306. Now notice that this is large and this is small. That means we're gonna get a larger number here, okay? So cross multiply, I get 90x equals 306 with 2 zeros, because I did 306 times 1, right? Divided by 90. divided by 90. Lob those zeros off because I'm lazy. Saves me step. 3060 divided by 9 gives me x equals 340. So this would be percent, right? So 340%. All right, so those practice problems on the bottom, let's go ahead and pause and do those practice problems and then come on back. I'm gonna gently set that on my computer. Don't accidentally stop recording. Okay, so 20% of what number is 800? 20%, so that goes here, right? Of what number, of is in the bottom and what means x, is 800. Bam, just like this. If you're doing this without a calculator, you can lob those off, right? So 800, actually, let's do this. This times this gives me 2x equals 8 times 1 gives me 8. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 zeros. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. X equals, and this just means cut in half, so x equals 4,000. So 800 is 20% of 4,000, okay? Let's look at B. What number is 18%? So it's another percent problem. All right, so what number is 18% of 360? And what number is, right? So x is, so we get 100x equals 18 times 36 gives me 648 with a 0 for these guys, right? Divide by 100, divide by 100, cancel out, x equals, these zeros lob off, and that when we're dividing by 10 just means move the decimal in, so it's gonna be 64.8. And that seems about right, right? If, let's say you have a test that's worth 360 points and you got 64.8 of them correct, you would get 18% on the test. For C, what number is 270% of this? So, bam, 100. So what number is 270% of 80? Okay, let's lob these zeros off and I end up with 10x because I multiplied this times this equals 27 times 8 gives me 216 with an extra 0. Divide by 10, x equals, cancel out, lob those off, you end up with 216. So 216 is 270% out of 80. All right, so the next one for D is one of those increase ones. So if 20 is increased by 90%, what is the result? So we're gonna start with our 100 here, okay? And we know that 20 is our starting number, okay? It's gonna be increased by 90%, so we're gonna take this whole starting number and we're gonna add 90% to it, okay? Put an X here, we get 100, actually let's lob those off so that it's a little easier. So 10 times X equals 20 times 19 gives me 38 with a 0. 2 times 19, 38. Divide by 10, X equals 38. X equals 38. So if 20 is increased by 90%, then it would be 38 because that's going to be at 90%. That takes that 90% of 20 is 18 and you add that to 20, that's where we get the 38, okay? So any questions on those guys, let me know, but I think that's an easier way to do these. So hopefully you guys agree. All right, thanks guys.